Hey, there we go. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host, just some guy that loves history and is a giant nerd. Um, hope you all are doing well. I love the love for the new intro and overlay stuff. I am very, very excited about it. It has absolutely just... I feel like something has... I don't know, like spring cleaning has hit or something like that. I don't know. It's a reinvigorating sense. And I am very excited about how everything looks and how great things are going. So, yeah, that's super fun. And again, I can't take credit for it. It is all done by friend of the show, Color by Emmy. If you do not already follow Color by Emmy, you should go check out her stream. And if you're looking for cool stuff like animated GIFs and neat little overlay things, she's got a really great eye. As you can see, you should go definitely get her to spruce up your channel if that's what you're looking for. So welcome everybody. Hope everybody's doing okay. Let me say hello to everybody. Hello Fidelia. Hello Figment. Hey DJ Cognac. Capacitor, welcome. Grethar, how's it going? Hope everybody is having an excellent night. The little adventure Shane. Hey Foggage, welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, it's adorable. Significantly cuter than I am, but that's okay. That's okay. Little Adventure Shane is down there, just hanging out, and little hat blowing in the wind. Emmy actually walked me through how she did all of that on her stream the other day. Was that yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday. How she made all of the layers. Is really neat process. Super interesting. And it's really impressive stuff. I'm very excited. So, hope everybody's having a good night. I'm having an overall okay day. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. I don't know if I might have some sinus stuff or something that I'm kind of coming down with, but I'm in good spirits. I just sort of feel bleh. One of those want to just take a nap this afternoon kind of days. Which luckily I can do, or could try to do, because it's summertime for me. So I'm working on basically just wrapping up this sociology master's degree, and that's the biggest thing for this summer. Work is over for the week, so you can't complain. Nice! Gotta love the long weekend. Per the show title, a new Flavor Flav ripped off historic... I was actually thinking about calling the stream Flavor Flavians, but I don't know if that would have landed. I don't know if it would have been okay. But hey, Techman, welcome. It was not so far out of my mind. It was one of the potential options, but I decided to go with Kenny Rogers instead. So. So the show is Adventures in History. We talk about history in a fun and approachable manner. We hang out, we joke with each other. We learn a little bit along the way. Maybe not just about history, but about ourselves and about humankind overall. So we come closer together. We've got a nice little community here. So if you're hanging out for the first time, welcome. Please feel free to be as involved as is comfortable for you, as involved as you would like. We live, we love, we laugh. Yeah, we be nerds, we learn things. All of this is true. I don't know if I've ever lived, laughed, loved, but close enough, right? No, everybody's welcome. Doesn't matter if you're a nerd or not. Though I will say that it's a pretty good chance that everybody is a nerd about something. I'm pretty sure that everybody has a little bit of nerd about something. Somewhere. Something that you know a lot about that a lot of other people don't know about. And you get really excited when people start talking about it. That's your little corner of the nerd world. So, anyway, I'm looking for something, and I can't remember where it is. Maybe I don't know where it is. This is a really horrible portion of the stream here. Like, watch Shane click through a menu board that you can't even see. And the puppy has graced us with her appearance. Oh, she's staring out the window looking at some little... likely some woodland creature in the backyard. Anyway, I'll have to work on this later on. I have once again forgotten to put in the lurk command. I need to make myself a note to remember to put in the lurk command. Somebody go... Never mind, I'll do that myself. So you're the person that balances me out in this world because you're awkward at everything. Oh, capacitor. You all. Okay, so yeah, anyway, let's kind of move along with the show. I'll worry about doing things that I should have done a week ago later because, you know, that's sort of the way that it goes. And so tonight we're going to talk about Rome one more time. This is the last time that we talk about Rome for quite some time. Again, on Thursday nights here, what we do is cover history in a chronological order. And we are currently in a phase that is covering the year 1 to the year 100. So the first 100 years of what we would call modern times, or AD, or CE, whichever one of the abbreviations you want to use. But we were talking about the first century. And when we get done with this century block, we will go to the next phase, which will be basically the year 101 to the year 200. And then we'll move over and we'll go back to Asia and we'll work our way back towards basically across the earth. So we've got one more stream that I'm certain of in this phase. So next Thursday, we're going to be talking about this region right here, which I have tentatively titled Kingdoms of the Upper Nile. We're going to be talking about a group of kingdoms that have grown out of that area, like the Kingdom of Meroe, Blemmyes, and Aksum, who are becoming sort of emerging powers during this first century. And we'll talk about them for certain. That might be the last stream of this phase before we move on to the next phase. I'm sort of considering just a general what's going on in the Americas during this time period. There is stuff going on in different parts of the Americas, clearly because people are living there. But it would sort of be a very jumpy sort of stream where we would talk a little bit about this stuff and then a little bit about stuff here and then a little bit about stuff up here. And it might be a little disjointed. I'll make my mind up and we'll figure it out. But again, tonight we're going to talk about Rome. The last time we spoke about Rome, we had a series of emperors in a dynasty called the Julio-Claudian dynasty. This was basically the family of Julius Caesar, and we had the first several true emperors of Rome: Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. And Nero, oh, he of the neckbeard. I get to show his photo one more time. I get to put on the adventure hat while I show his photo one more time. So again, just to remind everybody, when I show you a picture of something that I've seen or a place that I've been, I get to wear the adventure hat. So I get to wear the adventure hat a lot when we're talking about Rome. Is that an actual dumpster fire? Nice. Nice. I did not know that there was a global dumpster fire. That's amazing. Anyway, Nero, this guy. Nero did start the fire. It's always been burning since Rome's been turning, right? Okay, yeah. So Nero, he was the emperor. Rome, what? Rome was not built in a day. Yeah. So Nero ends up. Well, he commits assisted suicide. He kind of sissies out and doesn't actually kill himself. Not that killing yourself is a brave thing to do, just that he didn't have the stomach to do it. So he got his secretary guy to kill him. But this is going to set off a bit of a chaotic period of time because Nero did not have a direct heir. And this is going to sort of be a recurring issue because Augustus had problems trying to find an heir. Tiberius had problems trying to find an heir. Caligula got killed, and then the Praetorian Guard chose basically the only remaining male in the family to be the emperor. And then Claudius got effectively manipulated into picking Nero as his heir. I got a little fluff of lint in my hair. Oh, I do. Look at there. Thank you. Well spotted. So this situation with coming up with an heir, it's a problem. And Nero doesn't have one either. So when Nero dies, the question is, who gets to be emperor? And no, it's not a clue. There is no. Also, hey, Yvern. There's not any sort of hidden meaning behind floof in my hair. It's just floof. So, who gets to be emperor when Nero dies? Heirs are always a problem. This is accurate, Figment. Always figuring out who's going to be next. So, Nero doesn't have any kids. There are basically no more Julio Claudians because Nero had killed most of them. And the ones that were around were distant cousins or way too young to take over. So who gets to take over? Well, there are a couple of potential options. And the guy that's going to get it is this guy named Galba. Such a great name, right? You know, Galba. So who is Galba? Well, Galba was this guy. Something in your hair. Well played there, Vern. If English was a decent language, that H would make a noise, but but it doesn't. It's either a distant cousin or war. Take your pick. Yeah, pretty much. And Rome decided to go with war. So Galba is this guy. Galba was one of the top generals in Rome, and at the time he was stationed in the Germanic provinces. If English were a decent language. English is not one language. I always joke that English is 4 languages in a trench coat trying to buy liquor. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't Rome always go with war? Not always. Not always. But Galba was stationed over here in this region where there had been some trouble with some barbarian groups over in the Germany region. And Galba is basically going to be the guy with the most power that has the military on his side that can make it to Rome. And this is going to set an unfortunate precedence that's going to be carried out multiple times in the future of Rome. Who's got the biggest army that can get to the capital city first? If you can get to the capital city first and you can sit in the fancy chair and you can blackmail the Senate, you too can be emperor. Throw in our soldiers in the problem and it'll go away. Don't even worry about it. Until you don't have any more soldiers to throw, then you've got to hire barbarians and call them federati. So there had actually been a plot. It's called the Pisonian Conspiracy. That had been sort of cooked up about a year before Nero killed himself, where some people wanted to get Galba and put him in charge. They wanted to basically kill Nero and put Galba in charge. And a lot of the people that were trying to get this to happen were senator class individuals. Now, Nero had figured this out and killed a lot of them and exiled others, but there were still people inside of Rome that were like, Galba's an okay dude. If he can get here and do his thing, he'll be emperor. So Galba makes it to Rome. He stations his army a little bit outside the city, and he goes to talk to the Senate. And the Senate basically decides that they're going to kind of make him a deal. Like, you get to be emperor, however, you are going to sort of be a more limited emperor. And the Senate was pretty clearly trying to take over control again. They sort of saw the emperor phase as being done, and they're like, this is our angle. We're going to be able to take back over control. We're going to be able to reassert our dominance over the political system. These emperors were just a fluke. We really don't need any emperors. But that's not going to work, because when they let Galba take over as emperor, Galba's kind of a jerk. He's an older guy already. He was fairly advanced in age, very much set in his ways. And once he got the title of emperor, by the way, this is in the tail end of the year 68. He's not going to be so good at it. Galba in charge did not test well with audience, so let's change it to Charles. Is Scott Bowell doing anything? So Galba's kind of an egotistical jerk. He doesn't like being told no. He doesn't like taking these orders from the Senate, and he doesn't keep his promises. One of the things that he had sort of promised to some of the Roman military, including the important Praetorian Guard. If you'll remember, the Praetorian Guard... Wow, that's just deciding it's going to expand all over the place. I don't like that at all. That's the first time that's happened. And now that's doing that. I don't like that either. Okay, we're going to have to work on this a little bit. Can I lock you down? Yeah, you stay right there, bud. Still getting a little bit of the kinks worked out here in the new overlay, so I apologize there. Promise breaker, not going to go well. Nope. Emperors being egotistical jerks. It's not like they asked to be considered gods or anything. Hey, Sapphire Dallist. Neat little mouse emotes there. So unlike Rick Astley, he will let you down. Yeah, he really will. And he also will turn around and hurt you, because one of the things that he decides to do is get rid of a lot of the people that had put him in charge. A lot of the people that were in key positions, like the leader of the Praetorian Guard. Again, the Praetorian Guard was the personal bodyguard of the emperor. They were a legion stationed inside Rome. They had basically the task and the duty of preserving the imperial rule. Now, of course, that gave them a lot of power, and they're the ones that had killed Caligula and put Claudius in charge. So these guys had already shown that they were kingmakers. But Galba's going to get rid of the head of the Praetorian Guard and replace him with somebody that Galba liked. And he's also going to... And that's bouncing around again. You know, we're going to have to work on this. Can I don't know how I'm going to make that work. I don't know what's going to happen to make that happen. So can I add some spaces up here? And then add some spaces right here. And then put you back here in the middle. So that way things are centered out. Perhaps. Maybe that'll solve the issue a bit. We'll see. Again, working out the kinks. So yeah, he kills some people. He pushes a lot of people out of important political positions. Just like, get rid of everybody. Like, if I don't like you, you're going to get kicked out, right? And about this time, back in Germany, so back where he came from, there was another general by the name of Vitellius, who had the ear of a lot of the troops and had heard that Galba was not really keeping his promise, or promises, be they, and that the troops were not necessarily happy with following Galba anymore. So Vitellius goes, what if you all followed me? Would that be any better? And so the legions of Germany go, yeah, that actually sounds kind of great, so we will hail you emperor. So now Galba has an unhappy senate and kind of an unhappy population and a rebel under the command of the guy named Vitellius. History of typography. That would actually be a lot more interesting than I think people might think. Not that I'm volunteering to do it, but I could probably make a pretty decent stream out of that. History of fonts. Yeah, there's neat little things there that actually would be interesting to talk about. So, another thing about Galba is that he really likes to blow money. There's a good documentary called Typeface. Kelly, where might I be able to locate that? Is that a Netflix thing or a Hulu thing or an Amazon thing? I might have to look that up. That stuff, weird little stuff like that makes me excited. I'm a nerd, but also the puns write themselves. Da 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 da. Well played there, Vern. Very well played, my friend. Anyway, there's a lot of people pretty mad at Galba. And the guy that is really going to be the most angry at Galba is a guy named Otho. Let me check. You have like 8 nerd typography specials. My kind of friend here. My kind of friend. There's this guy named Galba. I'm sorry, this guy named Otho. Apologies. And Otho. Ooh, I forgot to crop Otho's picture. How am I going to do this? Ladies and gentlemen, give me just a second. I'm going to have to edit Otho's photograph. I forgot that this was a full body statue of Otho. And of course, you know what that means. That means, well, there are parts showing. How about that? I need to very quickly just add a very tactful black box that, yeah. And what's really crazy is that this guy almost certainly did not look like this at all. At all. But you know what they say about the emperor. Once you're the emperor, you get to basically be whatever you want to be. Okay, yeah, now I can show Otho. There we go. So this is Otho. Oh, do I need to cover his nipples too? It must just be you, Figment, because I'm not seeing any drop frames on my side. I'm not sure. Is anybody else having buffering issues? There were parts. So this is Otho. This particular statue is in the Louvre. When I was at the Louvre, I did not, unfortunately, get a chance to go over to the Hall of Roman Statues. I only had a few hours there, and there's just way too much in the Louvre. I need to spend about 2 days there checking out all of this stuff. And then I could wear the adventure hat the whole time. So, yeah, here's Otho. And Otho was supposed to have been adopted as Galba's heir. And this had been part of the whole power-sharing structure. Otho was supposed to be the next in line. And Galba was supposed to adopt him, therefore sort of securing Otho's ascension. However, Galba decided that he wasn't going to do that. He didn't really like Otho anymore, and he was going to go adopt this other guy. And Otho was just having none of it. So, you've got Art and Copy Helvetica, but Typeface is supposed to be on Amazon Prime, but it's not available in your area. I'll do what I can to figure it out, Kelly. I have weird ways of searching the internet. I'll probably be able to find it. So, here's the thing. Nobody really likes Galba. So in January of the year 69, Otho is going to start a plot. And he's going to get support from the Praetorian Guard, who don't like Galba because they were promised a large donative, which is basically a bribe. They didn't get it, and then Galba got rid of their leader, and that made them upset. So the Praetorian Guard is going to basically allow Galba to get assassinated. He's going to end up stabbed and very quickly done away with. And here comes the Praetorian Guard, like, immediately saying, Otho is the emperor. So that's the end of Galba. Galba ruled about 7 months. And now we have Otho. So remember, by the way, this year, the year of 69, is 4 emperors. So we've had one with Galba. Now we have Otho. And that should tell you a little bit about what's about to happen. And the answer is, it didn't go so great for Otho either. So Otho is going to take over, and right away he's got this big problem. And this big problem is this other guy named Vitellius. Remember, Vitellius was the Germanic legion general that had rebelled against Galba. And Otho was like, okay, so here's the deal. I need everybody to get behind me. We need to put an army together. We need to go and fight Vitellius. We're going to go meet him on the battlefield. There's no way we can lose. We have the gods on our side. And so by April, Otho has put his army together and he's marching north. And there's going to be a fairly sizable battle right here in the northern part of Italy between Vitellius's legions and Otho's legions. And even though Otho seemed to have a little bit of the momentum, it's not going to go so great. So the first thing that Otho is going to try to do is show up with this army and go, okay, look, when he sees the size of the army, he'll back down. And then Vitellius didn't back down. So then Otho's like, okay, let me try to bribe him. Secret Agent Otho, yeah. So Otho sends word to Vitellius, and basically he's trying to strike a deal. And he's like, okay, look, there's the empire is big. The empire's got lots of room, and we could split the empire between us. And you could be your guy, and you can do your thing, and I can be my guy, and I can do my thing. And we can rule together. And Vitellius was like, no, I don't like that idea at all. So it comes to a big battle. And this is in the end of April of 69 AD. And Otho's forces lose handily. And Otho, who had been leading the army, is going to, after the battle, go back to his tent. And they sleep that night, and that next morning, Otho wakes up and he's like, yeah, I slept on it. I'm just done. And he kills himself. He had basically been on suicide watch and had sneaked a dagger into his room and hidden it under his pillow prior to the battle. And the Praetorian Guard was already a little bit sketchy. Like, this guy is going to try to do something crazy. Like, if he loses, he might kill himself. And they were like, don't leave him alone. Don't let him kill himself. And then he did. So Otho stabs himself to death. I did not get that, KP. You are welcome to fill it in. Join me and we can rule together as father and son. Yeah, I gotta love it when your ruler's just like, I quit. I'm done. Yeah, so he kills himself. So that leaves Vitellius. Yeah, so Otho's dead. So now we have Vitellius. Secret Agent Osso, a teddy bear who is also a secret agent with lots of James Bond puns. Neat. Is Osso supposed to be a pun on Ursa? Is it derived from the same word as Ursa? Voiced by Sean Astin. This is getting better. This is a kid's show? Here's me getting excited about a kid's show. I'm a child. Okay. Like toddlers. Okay, so very small children. Apologies. I don't think I'll go that far. All right. This is Vitellius. And you go, that guy looks kind of un-imperial. Yeah. There's a reason for that. One of the ways that I tried to pun tonight's stream was punning Vitellius's name with something like victuals or victuals, like meaning food. Because this guy is closest to the Hobbit that we're ever going to get as a Roman emperor. He's not very tall. He's kind of stocky. And dude eats all the time. He is very fond of the feast. We'll have a feast that lasts all day, and sometimes 4 different feasts per day, because he was the inventor of the Taco Bell 4th meal that they tried. I don't know if you all remember that promotional thing that Taco Bell tried to do back about a decade ago, where they tried to invent this thing called 4th meal, where you go get tacos at 2 o'clock in the morning. If Winston Churchill was a Roman, that's actually fairly good. That's a striking comparison there. So Vitellius he's not remembered very well. The ancient historians do not write nice things about him. So first off, I thought beer and pot invented the 4th meal. Foggett, you are accurate. I know that Vitellius was a drinker. I don't think that he was probably very fond of beer. The Romans much preferred wine. Now, they had beer, especially out on the boundaries, the frontiers where it was hard to get lots of things transported. Also, in the northern parts of the empire where it was cooler and grapes were harder to grow. So beer was definitely a thing on the frontier, but I doubt that he was drinking very much of it on his feast days. And as for weed smoking, the Romans didn't really have a lot of exposure to that. That was something that had become relatively, I don't even want to say the word common. It had started up probably around this time in the easternmost parts of Africa, sort of down around over here, and over here, especially in Arabia. And then certain other plants were being smoked over in the New World, especially tobacco, and the chewing of coca leaves to get a stimulant effect. But marijuana was not necessarily widely used. So I doubt that his 4th meal was inspired by beer and weed. But it's a decent shot. But that's definitely what Taco Bell was hoping to cash in on for certain. Anyway, so Vitellius is not a good guy. At one point in his very short reign, so he took over in April, and he's only going to last until December. So, very short reign here. And at one point in his reign, there is someone, a philosopher / soothsayer, makes a prediction that he would rule longer if his mother died before him. So like if your mom dies, you'll reign longer. So he has his mother poisoned, which is kind of a jerk move. And there's not really any way to defend that. Not a good look for an emperor to poison mom. So lots of not good stuff. Okay, so around this time, if you were here last week, you'll know that the Romans were actually fighting a full-scale war. And that war was going on over here against armed insurrectionists that were part of the colony of Judea. The province of Judea, which had not been, at that point, completely brought into the Roman world. It still had a little bit of autonomy, but that had started under Nero in... the earliest parts of it were in 66, but it had really broken out in 67. So there had been a big Roman presence over here for about a year and a half. And the general that Nero had chosen was basically his top dude, his number one guy, his go-to right-hand man, this guy named Vespasian. And worst Mother's Day ever, pretty much. Though he did not consider that it just means that if he dies before his mother, he probably had a short life. Yeah, that... You don't think about this stuff all the way through, Vern. You just get paranoid and then you go poison your mom. That's what weird paranoid emperors do. Also, hey, you Batbird. Hope you're doing well. Welcome in. Good to see you. So, Vespasian was over in Judea fighting off these these Jewish insurrectionists while all of this other stuff was going on. So when Nero killed himself, Vespasian was over in Judea. And when Galba took over, and when Otho took over, and when Vitellius took over, Vespasian's still over in Judea. And Vespasian sort of has this idea. And the idea is, I'm better than all of them. And this is not necessarily wrong. Vespasian was a very popular general. He was very well tied into the political structure of Rome. He and his family had made some really good political marriages. He had a lot of military support because he was a very, very successful general. And he decides that he's going to go back. Like, Vespasian is going to go back to Rome, and he's going to take the empire. But he's going to do this in a sort of sneaky way. First off, he's going to declare that he is going back to Rome. He had a son, his first son. He actually had two sons, and both of them are going to be important to this story. His first son was a guy named Titus, and he leaves Titus in charge of the Roman army in Judea, and he's like, okay, we've got most of these guys wrapped up. You hold the fort here. We're going to go back to Rome. And he sort of declares himself in opposition to Vitellius. And at this point, Vitellius is kind of like scratching his head trying to figure out what to do. And Vitellius figured out that one of Vespasian's sons, his younger son, a guy named Domitian, what condition my Domitian was in, Domitian was still living in Rome. He was a young man at that time, in his early teens. And so Vitellius decides that he's going to put Domitian under house arrest. And this was basically his way of sort of threatening Vespasian. Like, look, if you do anything squirrely and you come over here and you try to push me out of the throne, I'll kill your son. So when Vespasian decides to sort of openly declare himself, he sends his army back under the control of one of his lieutenants. And Vespasian stops over here in Egypt before going to Rome. And you go, well, what's up with that? Egypt had been a little uncomfortable being part of the larger Roman Empire. Egypt was always used to being independent, having pharaohs running things their own way. And to be fair, all of the pharaohs thus far had assumed pharaonic names and had sort of tried to make themselves look like pharaohs, but most of them had never visited Egypt. And Egypt was crucial to the Roman world for one big reason, and that big reason was food. Egypt exported the majority of the food that people in the city of Rome ate. There we go. Food. Gotta have food. And when Vespasian stops over in Egypt, one of the things that he's doing is ingratiating himself to the local Egyptians. And when they decide that they're going to sort of support his effort, at that point, Vespasian has Vitellius in a corner, and he goes, if you do anything to my son, I'll shut off the supply of food to Rome. And then guess who they're going to come after? And go get the fat guy that's eating 4 meals a day and running around having, week-long feasts. You're going to be the one that they come after. And so now Vitellius is like, oh, crap. And when Vespasian's army shows up, this is going to be really bad. Vespasian's army is moving slowly across to Rome. We're coming up here, we're taking some ships over to Greece, and then we're going to march across Greece, we're going to take some ships over here. And Vitellius sends out an army to try to stop Vespasian's army. I guess I should type Vespasian here too, huh? So, Vespasian's army is going to be much more behind Vespasian than Vitellius's army is. And the general of Vitellius's army actually tries to mutiny. He tries to convince his legion, look, we should just bail, leave Vitellius behind, and we should go support Vespasian. That doesn't go so great. They do end up having a fight, but Vespasian's forces win pretty handily, and at that point, a lot of the soldiers mutiny and go to support Vespasian. And Vitellius is out of luck, because Vespasian's still sitting in Egypt. He is not coming to Rome yet. His army is going to Rome, but Vespasian is not going to Rome. He's staying in Egypt, where he can keep his hand on the faucet. If he wants to cut off the food, he can cut off the food. So Vitellius decides that he's going to just quit. Like, okay, look, I've seen what has happened to the last 3 emperors. Nero, dead. Galba, dead. Otho killed himself. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I want to quit. But here's the thing. A lot of the people that had supported Vitellius, especially his military, would not let him give up the throne because they were counting on him staying in power to give them gifts and power and positions. So they say, if you try to quit, we'll kill you. And so then he's basically forced to try to fight it out. And Vespasian's soldiers catch him and kill him. So he dies anyway. So that's the end of old Vitellius. And I just realized that, you try to quit, you try to do the right thing, and whatever you feel like is the right thing, and then you get dead anyway. That's just not a good way to go. But Vitellius is dead. And our new emperor is Vespasian. So Vespasian is going to take over at the very sort of end of 69 AD, and he is the 4th of our year of 4 emperors. He's also going to start a new dynasty. If you've noted, none of the last 3 emperors, well, technically none of the last 4 emperors have had an heir that worked, right? So Nero didn't have an heir that worked. Galba adopted a guy, but that didn't work out. Otho killed him, and, well, that was the end of that. Otho killed himself without an heir, and Vitellius didn't have an heir. So this issue of who's going to take over next is a pretty big issue. Well, luckily for Vespasian here, he's got sons. He has Titus, he has Domitian. So when Vespasian actually gets emperor, the position of emperor, he's not even in Rome. He's still over in Egypt. Which is a pretty wise move, because he wasn't going to leave Egypt until his position was secured. So his lieutenant that he had sent over to Rome with his army and Domitian, his son, are going to negotiate with the Senate and get the Senate to recognize Vespasian as emperor. And then once he is emperor and he gets word that you are officially emperor, he's going to hang around in Egypt for some more time. And he's doing this again because he really wants to convince these Egyptian people that they are important to him and that they are sort of part of his larger goal and part of his larger interest. There's several reasons for this. Number one, let's not forget that the Judea province is right here next to Egypt province. This area had just given them a lot of trouble. They want to make sure that there aren't going to be other problems over here in Egypt. There had been several riots in Egypt, especially in Alexandria, that were right at the beginning of the Jewish rebellion. He wanted to make sure that that stuff had been sort of tamped down. There had been a couple of people that had sort of been speaking out for Egyptian independence. He wanted to make sure all of that stuff was tamped down. But another thing that Vespasian really wanted, he wanted to go over here and conquer the Parthians. That was not going to be something that he ever actually managed to do, but this is something that he had thought about. Like, what if I could go over and beat up the other big empire in the region? It's not going to work out. And neither of his sons are going to be able to do that either. It's going to be several emperors down the road before Rome is actually going to give a decisive victory, the decisive defeat to the Parthians. And it's not even going to be the Parthians that get beaten by the Romans. It's going to be this other group called the Sassanids that defeat the Persians, or the Parthians, but that's... Now I'm getting way down the line. That's 3 phases from now. Anyway, so Vespasian, he is the emperor. Woo! What do you do when you're emperor? Well, first things first. You got to figure out what you're going to be. Like, who are you going to be? What are your things? What's your guy? What's your angle? Kill your enemies? Well, see, that's an interesting thing. Should we kill our enemies? That had not gone so well for the last few emperors. There were actually a lot of people that were still sort of pining for the reign of Nero. Nero had a lot of supporters. And Vespasian's like, I'm going to sort of position myself as the upholder of the Nero value core. And you're like, wait, did Nero have values? There were actually quite a few things that Nero did prior to him getting super egotistical that were quite good policies. One of the things that Nero did that had a fairly decent effect was some tax reform. Rome had been spending a lot of money, especially since Caligula. Rome had been kind of broke. Now, Claudius had fixed a lot of that. Nero had made some taxes at the beginning of his reign that sort of added to that bonus, but then by the end of his reign, he had started spending all of the money that he had been taking in. Nero, he got the job done. Nero, he's very much tax and spend, if you've ever heard that fun adage used in politics. Nero was more like tax and spend on cool stuff that I want. Tax and spend on rebuilding Rome in my own image after I burned half of it down. So the big fire in 64 had not been completely rebuilt. Rome was still in sort of bad shape. And by the time we got through this year of 4 emperors, after Galba had paid out big bribes to people, after Otho had paid out big bribes to people, and after Vitellius had paid out big bribes to people, Rome as a country was broke. So Vespasian is going to take this interesting approach that's not necessarily tax and spend, it's tax and propaganda. And this actually goes really well together if you do it the right way. You tell everybody that you are something, and then you do something that might work with that. But the reason you're telling people you're doing it is not the actual reason you're doing it. You're lying to the people to get them to accept taxation, and then doing pretty much what you want to anyway. But there's this balance that you have to keep between keeping the people happy through propaganda and taxing the devil out of them. And one of the things that, and this is true, this is recorded in multiple histories. One of the things that Vespasian does to raise money is he puts a tax on using public restrooms in Rome. So if you go to the public bathroom in Rome, you have to pay, and I'm not joking, the urinal tax. And his son Titus, who is sort of the next in line, Flavian, has this big argument with his dad, like, Dad, this is too much. Like, you're literally taxing people to use the bathroom. And he's like, it's making money. And Titus is like, this is not going to make money. And what's really funny is that after the first year of this tax going through, Vespasian supposedly has this sort of heap of money brought in and holds this coin under Titus's nose and says, smell this. And Titus goes, it doesn't smell like anything. And he said, yeah, because this came from urine. But guess what? Urine stinks, but money doesn't stink. So there's sort of and this hasn't been used for a long time, but if you go through history, the phrase money doesn't stink has been used several times to justify really unpopular taxes that bring in actual revenue. Why do the streets smell of urine? Yeah, pretty much. Taxing the poop out of people, right? We have an income of tax for years. Now we propose the outflow tax. The potty tax around here is that you have to clean up after the cat. Money does stink after you use the bathroom on it. Oh, goodness. Sadly, American money can't have an odor. Yes, I know American money is not the same as gold coins. You're killing the story. Just let it be. Anyway, so Vespasian also walks this sort of tightrope between giving benefit to political people, but also putting public people on trial. If you look at the list of people that don't like Vespasian, you're going to find quite a few individuals. He's going to win some of them over by basically bribing them, by giving them positions, by allowing them to secure certain amounts of, skimming off of the income, yada, yada, yada. But for the ones that won't come over to his side, he puts them on public trial. And very public trial where he, brings all of these crimes against them and then has them publicly lambasted. And everybody goes, oh, yeah, this guy was horrible. And that's how he gets rid of a lot of them. He's not a big fan of I'm just going to kill you. He doesn't want to actually just kill you. He wants to discredit you. And he wants to do it through the process. So this is part of the balancing act here. You can't just go after all of your enemies and kill them. Sometimes you got to drag them through the legal system and muddy their name up so much that nobody will trust them anymore. Then you can get rid of them, right? But Vespasian is not going to be all lovey-dovey with everybody. He basically puts a halt to all people in the empire that are writing histories. And anything that is written that is going to be basically circulated as an official history has to go through his office. He has to have final approval on all histories that come out of his period of time. And you go, well, that's censorship. Yeah, it is censorship. It's a great way of making sure that your narrative gets out there. And we have a couple of histories that come from his period of time where you see the actual writers going, yeah, I was paid for in part by Vespasian. I'll take fates worse than death in ancient Rome for 1,000. Yeah, the erasure of your dignitas. Vespasian also doesn't really like philosophers. He doesn't like these people that were asking the hard questions. These people that were posing these, quandaries and conundrums. Like, well, you could just do this, Emperor. Why aren't you doing that? He doesn't like that very much. And he has a lot of philosophers silenced, and then if they continue to write or publish things or speak in public, he has some of them exiled, and then he has some of them killed. So you don't kill politicians, you kill the philosophers, right? We know this already. Look what happened to Socrates. We call it controlling the narrative. Correct. How dare people think about things? No, you can think about whatever you want to, as long as it's Vespasian approved. Philosophy and logic. We never had a part in the Roman government. Wait, what? Pretty much. Yeah, so Vespasian. How is he going to keep people happy, though? Well, again, he's giving them gifts, but he's doing some things that are going to be pretty good. One of the things that he does is shut down a loophole inside of the military. He was a military guy. He was a military general. He was pretty big on, how the military worked. And one of the things that he's going to do is he's going to pass a law against military leaders selling furloughs. So one of the things that had become fairly popular was effectively bribing your commanding officer to let you go back home. And a lot of these low-level centurions and legates in the Roman army were making a killing off of allowing several of their soldiers at a time to go off on furlough and collecting this bounty. And Vespasian goes, we really shouldn't do that because it's not good for the guys. It's also not good for you because then you get really big-headed and you're sort of skimming from the public funds. Yeah, but we love loopholes. Yeah, the military had lots of loopholes, and he's going to start closing some of that stuff. That's actually a pretty popular thing, by the way, because not everybody could afford to bribe their commanding officer to let them go on furlough. A lot of people had to send their money all the way back home. This was mostly being used as an abuse for people that were in the upper classes to sort of buy their way out of military service. Like, oh, I served in the military. Did you actually serve in the military, or did you bribe your legate to let you go back home after, 6 months? Which one was it? Yeah, had loopholes. So, Vespasian is also going to start building stuff, and I get to put the adventure hat back on, because one of the things that he's going to start building is something that he calls the Flavian Amphitheater. But we know it as a different name. We know it as this guy, the Colosseum. This is in Rome. And he's going to start building this in 70. And initially it was just designed to be an amphitheater. But once they started building it, they were like, oh man, this is actually pretty cool. We should totally make this a whole Colosseum thing. This is where Flava Flav originally performed. Correct. Way back in the time where he had to hang a sundial around his neck. So he's going to start working on the Colosseum. This is going to be a pretty big deal. He's going to bring peace to the empire. This is another important thing. How do you get the people to like you? You make sure that they don't have to go fight a lot. You bring peace to the empire. So he's going to shut down a lot of rebellions. He's going to bring a lot of the border regions under control. And he's going to be a pretty good guy when it comes to military logistics, but he's a military guy. He is going to be interested in fully incorporating Judea. The Judea province is basically going to be gobbled up during the Flavian Dynasty. He's also going to do a little bit of expansion in Britain. Now, this is an area that had been first really sort of broached under Julius Caesar, but not really brought into Rome until the Emperor Claudius. And Claudius had established a colony down here, but Vespasian wanted the north, a region that they called Caledonia, which today we would call Scotland. Is this why in Civ 5 you can build coliseums for the +2 happiness? Yeah, absolutely, because people love going and seeing shows. We'll talk about what happens when they finish it under the next guy. It's a pretty cool dedication ceremony. Alba Gubra. Yeah, pretty much. So, Vespasian is going to rule from the year 69 all the way through 79. So, he gets a nice full reign. He is going to die of natural causes, and he doesn't have to worry because he has an heir. And his heir is his son, Titus. And Titus is going to be our next emperor. And I get to put the adventure hat back on because I took this photo of Titus. Well, I didn't take the picture of Titus. I took the picture of his statue. Here we go. Good old Emperor Titus. So, Titus was a young man when he took over. He was the oldest son of Vespasian. He didn't really have a good relationship with his brother. He had a sort of a tumultuous relationship with his dad. He had pretty adamantly fought against the potty tax. That was one of the things that he really, really didn't want to put through. And a lot of people are really, really worried about Titus. Titus had spent a lot more time over in Judea than his father did. So remember when Vespasian is going to claim the throne, he goes back to Rome in 69 AD. Titus is going to stay over there for another 4 years to sort of wrap up the completion of the war. He does go back and forth a little bit, but he spends a lot more time in Judea. And one of the things that a lot of people sort of had against him is one of his relationships. We'll just call it that way. And his relationship that caused the most of the problems was with this young lady, and her name is Berenice. And she's very frequently referred to as Berenice of Cilicia. Sometimes you'll see her referred to as Julia Titi, or basically, she was the paramour of Titus. She was the daughter of a guy named Herod Agrippa. And if you remember our discussions about the Jewish rebellion, one of the Roman appointed leaders in Judea was this guy named Agrippa. And this was his daughter. And Agrippa was not necessarily a very good leader. He had been exiled and killed. And Berenice was sort of seen as this really bad influence on Titus. So while Titus was sort of growing up under his dad's rule, a lot of people were like, dude, if she becomes emperor, or if Titus becomes emperor and she becomes like the empress, this is going to be bad. She's not Roman. She does the things in like the weird ways that they do over there in the monotheistic area. We need to watch out for her. And Titus is actually going to have sort of this like this kind of sad moment where he becomes emperor and Berenice comes to see him, and he doesn't let her in Rome. He is trying to win the Senate support, and he sends her away. And it's sort of like this tragic, hearts broken, sad thing where he doesn't get to be with the woman that he loves because of this new job that he has. So, yeah. I've missed some chat stuff. First time you saw it out of the subway in Rome, you thought it was a postcard coming to life. Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Was Rome your favorite? He does have big hands, Titus. Favorite in Italy was somewhere else. Trento, yes, was good. No Rome for you! Come back, never. It's unfortunate. Count Adama. Been looking for a Roman history channel on Twitch for a while. Awesome stuff. Well, thank you, Count Adamar. I hope that we don't end up having jousting issues, because I would hate for that to turn into a negative thing. I do quite like A Knight's Tale, though. One of my favorite feel-good historical movies. Oh, Moose. You have to say that you're disappointed because you were expecting a lot more nudity. Yeah, that HBO show. Okay, so let me say this about the HBO show on Rome. They did an amazing amount of stuff in that show very, very well. Very, very well. The costumes were spectacular. Incredibly accurate costumes. A lot of the sort of day-to-day operation. Bum ba dum bum, bum ba dum bum bum. Oh yeah, welcome to the adventure. Historical, yes, historical with finger quotes. With finger quotes, it's based on A Knight's Tale, which is historic, and of course it's fiction. But you know, it's historical. It's not a documentary, no. But yeah, the Rome TV show, like a lot of the day-to-day operation stuff, like how their houses operated. Like how the servants acted and the relationships between the men and the women, the relationships between the slaves and the master stuff. A lot of that stuff was so well researched. So well researched. However, the storyline, not so much. They jacked up the storyline a lot. So the way that I like to describe Rome is the world that they made as the setting of Rome, the TV show, was excellent. One of the best representations of historical living that I've ever seen, period. The story of Rome is about 50% fiction. So, unfortunate. Your favorite documentary is Cowboys and Aliens. You know what? I went to see Cowboys and Aliens in the theater, and I didn't think it was horrible. So that's my hot take. Cowboys and Aliens, not a horrible movie. You wish Twitch had more educators. Cowboys and Aliens was not horrible. Okay, so Titus becomes emperor. He has to play against these preconceptions of him. These ideas that he was going to be a horrible emperor, that he was going to be impulsive and be led around by this lady from Judea, and he puts all of that aside, and the historians remember him really, really well. Now, this is going to be an example of positive bias. One of the biggest historians of Roman history that we have is a guy named Suetonius. And Suetonius wrote a biography on the first 12 emperors, and we get a ton of really important information from Suetonius. Suetonius was a senatorial class individual, and Suetonius has a lot of positive bias towards any emperor that seemed to support the Senate. And Titus very clearly seems to have been interested in getting the Senate on his side. He wanted to sort of rule kind of like an old Roman might. And that is one of the reasons why he is remembered so well. But we do have other historians. We have Tacitus, we have Cassius Dio, we have other sources that also recall the fact that Titus was a pretty good emperor. He got along pretty well with everybody. He seemed to get along well with the Senate. He sort of asked them for advice, which of course they loved. But there's going to be a lot of unfortunate stuff that happens in his reign. One of the biggest ones is the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. So if you've ever heard of the city of Pompeii, or the sort of sister city of Herculaneum, that was swallowed up by lava and ash and volcanic eruption, that happened in his reign. Titus is going to reign, by the way, from 79 to 81. And there was also a huge fire in the city of Rome. So this is not the fire that Nero started. This is another big fire that just eats a whole bunch of stuff up. And so Titus is going to be sort of plagued by these bad luck. He can't really do anything about a volcano. You can't necessarily do very much about a fire. He didn't start it himself. It just seems to have been, what happens. Let's remember that ancient cities were made out of wood, and they burn really easy. Oh boy, that part, yeah. Is there anything about what the contemporaries thought of what happened at Pompeii? Yeah, there actually, there are several historical accounts of Pompeii. You can go to Google and just Google primary account Pompeii. There were some people that survived it. That's recorded in several different histories of the time. The thing about Titus, though, Titus, again, he was the general in charge of ending the rebellion in Judea. And at the end of the rebellion in Judea, the Jewish population from that area was forcibly deported all the way across the Roman world. So they were scattered out on purpose so that they could not group up and form rebellions again. And it starts getting back to Titus that one of the reasons all of these bad things are happening under his rule is because he destroyed the temple. So one of the things that happened at the end of the Jewish rebellion in 70 AD was that the Romans destroyed the Jewish temple. Yes, this is the diaspora. So there's this idea that's coming out of the Jewish population of the Roman Empire that one of the reasons all this stuff is happening under his rule is because he's being punished by God. But there are other things that happen that are good. He seems to rule very well. He's going to finish the Colosseum. So he's the guy that brings it all the way around full circle and finishes it out. When he finishes it, he has this big dedicatory celebration that lasts 100 days. So there is 100 days of games and feasting and parties. Basically, anybody can go and watch this stuff for free. It's all on the tab of the Roman Empire. 100 days of party. Yeah. Imagine that today. Right? It's like spring break for 3 months. But if you heard me correctly, you heard me say that he ruled from 79 to 81. And that's only about 2.5 years. Because he dies very suddenly. Hey guys, the Emperor just shared his Netflix password with the country. Yeah, pretty much. Everybody just goes on a bender. Yeah. So, he died suddenly. Now, everybody immediately wants to know why Titus died. Did he get murdered? Is there anybody that would murder him? Well, yeah, it turns out that there is somebody that might murder him. The guy that might murder him is actually his little brother. His little brother's name is Domitian. We are being visited by the puppy again. Hello, puppy. Oh, do you actually want to come up here and see me? I am being beckoned to allow the puppy up into my lap. So we are going to get a free puppy viewing because the puppy has asked. Come and see me. Oh, here's the puppy. Hello. Oh my goodness, so many sugars. What you want? What are you up to? Oh, the puppy. What you doing? You just want somebody to look at you? Oh my goodness gracious. What do you want? Do you want to go outside? Do you need to go outside? No. What are you doing? I don't know if you all can see her. She's just sort of hovering down here. You want me to scratch your back? Oh, yes, scratch my back. Oh, the puppy. Oh, yes. Here's the puppy emotes. We'll share the puppy emotes. She loves getting her back scratched. That is definitely one of her things. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's so good. Oh, yes. Scratch my back. Give me attention. Hey, Flotapop. Welcome, welcome. I have thought about making a... let me see if I can actually get the camera up. She's just like hovering right down here, letting me scratch her back. Kaylee Poo. Hey. Oh my goodness. Oh yes, under the neck. That's the good spots. Right here on the ears. Oh yes. Oh yes, the floppy ears. You can scratch them and you'll take off. Oh my goodness. Is that what you wanted? You just wanted some attention? Well, I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to stream. Yeah, can I go back to streaming? No, just... All right. Good to see you, Sci-Fi Dallas. Have a good night. All right. I got to go back to streaming. We can't just have unlimited puppy stream. That would not work. You want to go see Brittany? You go see Brittany. Oh, we've got to stretch first. No, go see Brittany. I got to go back to streaming. Oh, the puppy. Now I've got my chair all messed up. There we go. Okay. Unlimited puppy stream. Oh, goodness gracious. So, could it be that Domitian murdered Titus? I hate to tell you, but if you just stream the puppy sleeping, you would hit associate in about... Well, I'm already affiliate. Partner is the next one up. And... yeah, if I put a GoPro with a Wi-Fi adapter on the puppy and just let her walk around the house, I would probably hit partner pretty fast. People do tend to love the puppies. Anyway, did Domitian murder Titus? Probably not. It does seem that he got sick. Let's not forget, though, that... ancient people get sick and die a lot because they don't have modern medicine. You know, you could legit just get sick and die. Now, there's an alternative version of his death. And this is, again, is coming out of the Jewish community that have a big bone to pick with Titus because he destroyed their temple. The Jewish story account, historical account, is that a bug crawled up his nose and got into his brain and basically started like eating out his brain and laying eggs in his brain. And that was because he destroyed the temple and God was punishing him. Now, did he have bugs in his brain? Probably not. But weird things happen in the ancient world. Apparently weird things happen in modern world when I can't drink water because the ice breaks in the middle of things and I look like an idiot when I try to drink. I promise I have motor skills and dexterous ability. Necrotizing bugitis. Yeah, it's bad. Anyway, Titus is dead. And we have a new emperor, and his name is Domitian. Domitian. And I got to put the adventure hat back on. Ba-ba-da-bum. That's a bad way to go, even compared to other Roman emperors. Yeah. Ancient historians have a field day sometimes with weird ways that people die. And I will say this about the Jewish people. They have a really interesting history of recording how people die in weird ways. For example, one of the big bad guys in the Jewish scripture falls from some height and his body breaks open and his guts were all full of worms. And he basically exploded from the force of the worms in his gut. I don't need an ice to look like an... Yep, there we go. So Domitian. Who is Domitian? This guy. Boop. That is Domitian. Here he is in all of his glory. Flaggage, I would totally admit if I had a drinking problem. The issue is I don't drink at all. I mean, I drink water. I've been drinking a lot of water lately. I'm overhydrated. I have a hydration issue. I can't stop. He is pretty smug. The thing about it, though... Yes, he has the loins girded, indeed. As if ready for battle. He's wearing the good Roman armor because he's a soldier. Well, I mean, he does some fighting. Anyway, Domitian. He's the emperor. What's up with him? Well, people don't like him. Wish we had nose-picking pictures. These statues look like they have gold up there. No, I'm with you, Foggage. I'm just commenting that I'm having enough trouble drinking water. Imagine how bad it would be if I was actually drinking alcohol. Like if I was actually impaired. My motor senses would be, or what am I looking at here? Not my motor senses. My motor skills would be even further impaired. And I would just basically just pour it on top of my head, I guess. I don't know. That was my bad. I was improperly explaining the way that I was interpreting your joke with another joke. So, Domitian. Well, right off the bat, when he takes over, he's not a fan of how little bro or how big bro was running the empire. He was not a fan of how Titus was running things. He did not like the idea of, he didn't like being friendly with the Senate. How about that? You are the living embodiment of an airplane joke. Thanks, KP. I love you too, man. It's also fair to note that Titus died without having an heir. And the reason that Domitian was able to assume the throne is because Titus did not have an heir. So there's this kind of recurring issue of there are no heirs. So when Domitian takes over, right off the bat, he's going to change the way a lot of stuff operates. Because Domitian is a micromanager. He wants to be oh so detailed involved with everything. He is going to increase the size of the bureaucracy so that he gets reports on everything. He wants to know how everything is going all the time because he wants to run everything. He starts passing a whole bunch of new laws about the daily activities of Romans, what you can do, who you can marry, what happens if you do these things while you're married. He reclassifies some things that were just sort of morally bad as criminally bad. And he gets really, really involved. He allows himself the power of censor. So censor is an actual government position inside of Rome. And he is going to give himself perpetual lifetime censor powers so that he can oversee the morality of the Roman Empire. Because he wants to run everybody's life. He wants to run the way that the Romans operate by running the people of Rome. That's just not so great. He is also, for the children. if only for the children. The reason he wants to micromanage everything and the reason he wants to be on top of everything is because he is super paranoid. Crazy super paranoid. Because he doesn't want to end up dead. Yeah. He's also going to micromanage the monetary policy of Rome. This whole taxation structure thing, he's going to fix a lot of that. He's also going to bring in a lot more money because he's micromanaging stuff to the hilt. People can't run their schemes. People can't skim anymore because he is all up in their business. People can't, raise taxes just real quick and gather a whole bunch of money and go build a new villa because he wants reports of where everything is going. And oddly enough, this really helps out the empire. Oversee the morality of the Roman Empire. I would watch that show, but it'd probably have to be on HBO, right? The morality of the Roman Empire. Can we send it a search party? He's bringing it back. He's bringing back the morals of Rome. What's interesting, though, his micromanaging and paranoia actually do help the Roman world. If you look at the percentage of purity of his coins, and I know this is going to get really weird because who gives a crap about the purity of a coin? Well, let me tell you, the ancient people knew. You gave them a silver coin, they knew how much of that coin was silver. They knew. And they checked. The average amount of silver in his coins was almost 10% higher than it had been for almost a century. This guy fixed the Roman monetary issue by managing the money. He wanted to know where it went. He wanted to know what it got spent on, who spent it. He wanted to know who was skimming, who was blackmailing, who was embezzling. And because he had the power of the empire and because he was all about morals, if you got caught with your hand in the till, you got punished to the max. He wasn't going to joke around. I'm bringing morality. Yeah. Yep. Oh, Foggage. If you only knew that he thought that he was very pretty and liked to sing. Archimedes in that ring. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So, he balanced the budget. He did balance the budget. That's crazy. Where's Domitian? On the coins. Yeah, he totally loves putting his face on the coins, by the way. He was also a really big devotee to, the Roman version of Athena is Minerva. And said that Minerva's wisdom was guiding him in making all of these decisions. So what is the long-term effect of Domitian's reign? Well, he rules from 81 to 96, and in that span of years, Rome does really well. He is going to stabilize the economy. He's going to fix a lot of the corruption. He's going to have a very strong and an incredibly loyal military. And the military is especially going to be something that he takes pride in because, Dad was a military guy. I need to be a military guy. Augustus was a military guy. I need to be a military guy. And he's going to have a couple of campaigns. He's still fighting against those Caledonians, those Scots up in the northern part of they're not actually Scots at that point, but the ancestors of the modern day Scots in what the Romans called Caledonia. But he's also going to have a string of battles against a group of people that are living right here. What is modern day Romania is the ancient region of Dacia. Can we say he made Rome great again? Sure. He did fix a lot of stuff. He really did. He's a jerk, and we'll talk about a lot more of the jerky stuff that he does in a bit, but he's a jerk with a good head on his shoulders. Anyway, so Dacia right here. Inside of Dacia, there was already a big population of people, and Rome had sort of been interested over the past few emperors in maybe incorporating Dacia as a province of the Roman Empire. And Domitian thinks that this might sort of be his thing. And inside of Dacia, there's a king there named Decebalus. And I can show you an image of Decebalus. Ooh, I got to show you this first. One of the things that Domitian did with all of his money was he added on to the Colosseum. If Dad started it and Big Brother finished it, I need to do something too. So he added what were basically the upper class high deck seats. These guys right here. And I need to put my adventure hat back on. This is my picture from when Brittany and I went to the Colosseum. So you can see here that you have 1 and 2 levels right here. But this level up here, this sort of upper deck seating area where the super rich people would get to go and hang out and party and chat while they watch the games. This was something that Domitian added because, again, he needs to be involved with the family business. And if the family business is this big building, he needs to be part of it too. So he adds this upper row of seating here. But the Decebalus is this guy. So he added the private boxes, the luxury suites, pretty much. This guy that we see right here is a guy named Decebalus. And he was a king of the Dacians. And he was going to be one of the issues that sort of started plaguing Rome. Decebalus and his Dacian armies were very successful in fighting off the Romans. The army under Domitian was going to keep Decebalus out of Roman territory, but he was not going to be able to take over the Dacians. So it's only a semi-successful campaign against the forces of Decebalus. We will talk more about Decebalus in the next time we visit the Roman world, when we talk about a group of guys called the 5 Good Emperors, especially under a guy named Trajan, who was the second of the 5 Good Emperors. So we added the private boxes. Yes. Ironically, in modern stadiums, that would have been the cheaper seats. The nosebleed section, right? The Dacia Sandero. I mean, I watched Top Gear, but I didn't watch every single episode of it. Green Bay's retrofit made poor people pay for the luxury seats too. Alas, did they have big foam fingers? No. They did have sponges, but they didn't use the sponges for what you were thinking. Is there a particular reason why they changed the name from the Flavian Amphitheater to the Colosseum? Well, the initial plan, Adamar, was for it to just be a Colosseum. I'm sorry, just to be an amphitheater, which is, sort of the half moon shape. And then they were just like, you know what? Just ring the whole thing in. Just ring the whole thing in and build it all up, and we'll just turn it into a big whole thing. For my number 1. It's for number 2, actually. Yes, we all know what the sponges were for. They were for the public bathrooms. And there were guys that would have sponges on a stick outside of the public restrooms so that you could rent one if you needed. And basically when you were done with it, it got rinsed off, and then the guy with the public sponges rented them out again. If you love me, then you'll make a ring of it. Oh, if you like it, you should have made a ring of it, right? Oh. So Domitian sounds pretty great, right? Sounds pretty good. Another thing that is going to get him a lot of support from the sort of common person in Rome is that he's really going to start pushing the Roman religion. We need to get back to the good old foundation of the Roman religion. He's going to rebuild a lot of temples. He's going to spruce up several of the temples. His family had already built a big temple to Peace, the goddess of peace inside of Rome, that had been started under his dad, Vespasian. He's going to spruce that up some. He's going to rebuild some of those temples that had been destroyed in the big fire under his brother. But he's also going to persecute Christianity. P-taxes and sponges for hire. Yes. Your mom were telling you about the bucket she had for used diapers. She was so glad when we weren't in diapers anymore. Yeah, I bet. I wouldn't want to get in that poop. Anyway, so he's going to be a big persecutor of Christianity. And there's a reason for that. Christianity was growing, and it had found a home in a lot of the big trading cities. And one of the things that Domitian is pretty well known for is that he did not spend a lot of time being still. He toured all over the Roman Empire. Part of this was to make sure that they were doing things the way that he wanted them to, but part of it was also just checking in, making sure that everybody recognized that he was in charge. Is there anything that I can do while I'm here? Can I micromanage you for a few months? And he had started running into these Christians. And the Christian faith has several documents that talk about how bad persecution was under Domitian. And if you are of a particular type of individual that interprets the final book of the Christian Bible, which is the Apocalypse of John, if you interpret it a certain way, well, that book talks about this guy that's the Antichrist. And certain people think that Domitian is the Antichrist because he was persecuting so many Christians. And there's a way to interpret it that way. It's a bit involved. You have to understand stuff like Gematria, and you have to understand Hebrew a little bit. That would be an interesting viewer request stream. If anybody wanted it, I could walk everybody through it. But it's a little bit more than we have time for here. Apparently, you clean used cloth diapers by swizzling them around in the toilet before you throw them into the washer. That's an interesting technique. I would have never thought about that, but I would guess that you probably would not want to throw an entire used diaper into the washer because then you have to wash your other clothes after that, and yeah. Okay, so why then does Domitian not rule for 40 years? He was a young guy when he took over. Why doesn't he rule forever? Well, it's because the politicians hated his guts. Hated his guts. They couldn't get away with the corruption that they were used to. They couldn't get away with the embezzling that they used to. And they hated being micromanaged. So the politicians, especially the senatorial class, are going to plot to kill Domitian. And they succeed. They sway one of Domitian's supporters, and they work out this sort of involved plot where they're going to pretend like this guy has hurt his arm. And so they pretend like this guy had broken his arm and he had it wrapped up in a bandage. And he had done this for weeks, to keep his arm rigid. And then on the day that the plot was going to go down, he sneaked in a long-bladed dagger into the bandage wrap. And because everybody was used to seeing who with the bandage, they didn't check it. So he rushes up to the guards outside of Domitian's door and says, I have discovered a plot to kill the emperor. And they're like, oh man, you got to go on in and tell him about it. And so they get in the room and they shut the door behind him, and then he stabs the emperor. And Domitian, to his credit, breaks out his own weapon and stabs that guy back. And they apparently wrestle for a while, and other people get involved, and Domitian stabs another guy, and they all end up dying, but he ends up dying too. Could you do an episode on popular people in ancient Rome? No one seems to like anyone. It depends on what you consider popular. I mean, Domitian was massively popular. The everyday person in Rome seemed to have really liked Domitian. The Senate hated his guts, but that's a whole different class of people, quite literally. They must have some national treasure, like an ancient Roman Tom Hanks. Who's that guy that no one hated? Scipio Africanus. Nobody hated Scipio Africanus. I can't say the same for Scipio Aemilianus, but nobody hated Scipio Africanus. Populous magazine. Well played there. So Domitian gets assassinated. And one of the things that really shows how far the Senate went to prove that they hated this guy is that once they killed him, they passed this law. There we go. I think it's just no, it's EA. They passed a sentence after he died called Damnatio Memoriae, which is literally, we're going to damn his memory. And the Senate passed this, and they went around Italy casting down his statues, scraping his name off of buildings, destroying anything that he had written himself, tearing down anything that was dedicated to him, just absolutely wrecking anything that reminded anybody of Domitian. And I would like to point out that the reason they didn't like him is because they couldn't be corrupt. He was a jerk. He was overbearing. He had a massive ego. But one of the biggest reasons they hated him is because he made them straighten up. And just imagine what would happen today if somebody got elected and then made all of the government today act right. Just imagine what would happen there. Like de-Leninization, pretty much. And we're going to Stalinize everything, right? All right, ladies and gents. So that is going to wrap it up for me. We're going to end our stream right here because the next group is a group of guys named the Five Good Emperors. Starts off with a guy named Nerva. And we will talk about him in the next phase. We won't be talking about the Romans directly for a little bit. Nothing is going to tick off a politician like making them not be scumbags. Alrighty. So at this point of the good old-fashioned stream, as always, I will ask if anybody has any additional questions. Anybody want to spend any points on the stream here? Remember that below your chat window you have adventure points. You look for the little adventure hat icon, and you are collecting adventure points, and you can use them for various things. Did we have a viewer request poll on Tuesday? We did not have a viewer request poll on Tuesday. We had a point redemption. So our next viewer our next viewer request was actually redeemed from points. We are going to be doing an interesting look on Atlantis, the history of it, and where people think it might be. The XL pipeline. No, the Keystone XL pipeline is history, but very, very recent history. Didn't hit me. Yeah, that's fine. I don't know if you were necessarily here when that happened, but that's cool. Totally cool. Yeah, so we'll be doing Atlantis. I have that scheduled for next week, so we will see. I feel like I can probably get that done by next week, and we can do. What's in the news? You want to talk about the Keystone XL pipeline. Okay, so the Keystone XL pipeline was something that had been put together by several different companies, but it was being mostly sort of spearheaded by a Canadian company that was effectively going to connect the oil sands and tar sands part of Canada up here all the way down to the Gulf Coast. And this was supposed to move a lot of Canadian oil through places. Here, let me put the borders on so we can get the states in the United States. North. So it's supposed to run here through the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and then link into existing pipeline sections here in Texas, and then get out to here. So, right, you could get the oil moving from Canada down to the Gulf for either transportation or refinery. And this is something that had been proposed a long time ago. It was something that they had started trying to get moved through under the end of President Obama's second term. And President Obama basically did not let it happen. He wrapped it up in EPA regulations and investigations on environmental impact of the Keystone Pipeline. One of the things that was particularly poignant and looked at was moving the pipeline through some Native American land here in the Dakotas, and whether or not that was legal. The Dakota Territory, there should be one. Have you been watching Bill Maher, there, DJ Cognac? Because that's one of his punchlines, is that there should only be one Dakota. Anyway, so under President Obama, the Keystone XL pipeline was basically a failed proposition. There was a lot of work being done up here in Canada. There was movement in getting this stuff going, but the work here in the United States was not coming to fruition. President Obama left office. Then President Trump comes in, and President Trump removed a lot of the roadblocks that President Obama had put up. He gave clearance for the Keystone XL pipeline to continue moving and building. There had been a few issues with how that went through, including a couple of spills at the very beginning of his term after he had authorized it when they started building. And it was not necessarily going as quickly as any of the companies involved really wanted. And over the course of President Trump's term, it didn't really get as far as they thought it was going to. There was not as much progress as anybody had expected or as anybody had promised. So there was a little bit of consternation amongst the investors and the business people that were involved anyway. When President Trump did not get reelected and President Biden comes in, of course, President Biden has a very wide difference of interpretation. And as of yesterday, he revoked the clearances for the XL pipeline to continue to be made. And at that point, that brought it back to, is this even worth it at all? So it's clearly not something that was going to be able to be done under President Biden under the next 3.5 years that he's president. And because it had already run into financial trouble and some construction issues, today the Canadian companies that were basically behind the push of it effectively said, we're done trying to make this work. Whether or not that changes in the future, if we have a Republican Congress or a Republican president elected in the future, that might come back. But as of right now, it is effectively dead. And the construction that is existing is shutting down, and the pipeline that is existing is probably going to continue to be used, but there's not going to be any more added to it. It's not going to get even, I think it's maybe a third of the way done. I can't remember exactly how much it has been completed, but so that's what's up with the Keystone XL pipeline. Erky Derky. Anybody else have questions or comments or ideas or redemptions, anything of that nature? If not, we can get ourselves together for a raid. And I think I know who is going to go raid. Anybody else? Any questions, comments, concerns? I guess you could talk about concerns if you really want to. Oh, the puppy is outside and is woofing. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so we're going to go make ourselves a raid. And we are going to go raid Allie Briggs. Allie is a great artist, a fun streamer, has a lot of talent, and we don't get to raid her as often as other channels because she's not always streaming when we are on. Whatever happened to Brexit? It happened. They have Brexited. There's still a lot of negotiations going on. There's a window basically that they have to fix some of the stuff negotiating, and it's not going very well. But we won't get into all of that right now. There is a lot of negotiation, correct. All right, so we're going to go raid Allie Briggs. Thank you all so very, very much for hanging out. Had a great time tonight. Hope you all had a great time too. We will be next on Tuesday night next week, and we'll talk about Atlantis, which is, it's a historical thing. So there we go. Hope everybody has a great weekend. There is a small chance that I might be on this weekend. I have a lot of stuff to get done this weekend, including a birthday party for one of my nephews. I don't know if that's going to help or not when it comes to free time, but I know that we also need to have a History of Middle-earth stream, and I'm working on figuring out where and when to have that. But anyway, for now, Tuesday, 1900 Central Standard Time is the next time that I'll definitely be online. Until then, keep an eyeball on the Discord, and I'll tell you if I'm going to do any pop-up streams. Otherwise, have a great one. Thank you all very, very much, and I'll see you around the interwebs.